World Creator 2025 is available with your Octane Studio Plus subscription. In the Otoi coupons, you'll find the product coupon code that you can redeem on the World Creator site for a full access indie license. Once you have access, you'll be able to assign the license, download the DCC bridges, the samples, and download World Creator itself. Once installed, you can open up and dive into World Creator and start creating. In the Samples tab, we can jump right into a predefined terrain that we can break down and expand upon. Once loaded, you'll see your terrain design in real time to your left, and all the display tools and terrain settings in the shelf to the right. With different display modes, we can toggle Cinematic for full cinematic visualization, and additional environment settings can be found in the Scene tab. Material Design mode will strip away environmental influence and allow us to focus on shading and building out the material independently. Finally, we have the Shape Design mode, and this allows us to work in the terrain details and geometry, which can help tremendously when designing early on, similar to a matcap view. Next, we'll look at the resolution settings in the terrain itself, which are the most important settings to define. These settings establish the overall scale of our terrain in meters. Currently, the terrain is set to 1024 meters by 1024 meters. If we select the 2K button, we'll see the terrain upscale to 2048 by 2048. Effectively, our resolution in pixels jumps from 4K to 8K as well. When scaling the terrain, the texture scales as well to meet the fidelity of the new scale. We have a predefined shape layer that doesn't account for the new terrain scale, so we can disable it for now. If we jump back down to the 1K terrain scale, our pixel resolution jumps back down from 8K to 4K. You can also manually type in values. We drop to 512 by 512, we once again cut our terrain scale down by 1/4, and our resolution drops from 4K to 2K. But the important thing is to note that the details remain the same. They just cover a much smaller area. So a smaller texture can define the same level of detail at a smaller patch of terrain. Now let's look at the precision value. Precision deals specifically with detail and frequency. If we want the smaller terrain to remain as is, but we want the texture to be 8K, we can jump from 1/4 meter precision to 16th meter precision, and we upres the details from 2K to 8K. And the same goes for downscaling. If we want to drop half a meter precision, the size of the terrain and our resolution become 1K. And if we scale the terrain up with precision still at half a meter, the resolution becomes 2K to account for the larger terrain. This resolution theory is important to understand. So you can build terrains with the proper resolution in mind, also knowing you can adjust the precision later. You can work faster with the lower resolution in real time, and then bump it up when you're ready to export and render. The resolution will affect things like your biomes, shape layers, and simulation layers. Let's disable all of the filters and simulation effects now to drop down to our base geometry. It's nice to think about World Creator as an additive workflow, where you can build out procedurally with more and more, or even replace as you go. With all of these details disabled, we can jump back to the terrain and look at the base model settings. Base noise gives a base terrain noise that adds directly to the base shape, pretty much the first value of added detail. The base setting itself allows us to create height based off the shape setting, which we can zero out, and now we pretty much have a flat plane to start from scratch. Let's add a bit of the base detail back, and take a look at the distribution and filters. Distributions allow us to isolate biomes to specific distributions. Biomes can contain filters, shape layers, materials, and more. And you can use biome distribution to stack numerous biomes. With filters within a biome, we can add live distortion filters from simple to advanced operations that redefine the details from the base terrain. What's great with World Creator is there's documentation for all of these filters and all the features that you can access with the small eye icon, which opens up the information webpage. Here you can see examples with descriptive breakdowns of all the features, and it's super handy. For each filter you have a separate controller and setting, and there are also presets you can explore different predefined styles. Filters themselves stack nicely over each other, and as mentioned earlier, they're redefined based off the base terrain, so any base terrain adjustments the filters will recalculate. Advanced filters like hydraulics will run iterative filtering, which means you can simulate multi-iterations of these filters for unique simulated effects. Order of operation matters, so you can apply filters before or after additional filters for different looks. Simulation layers offer physics-based sediment layers for adding simulated effects like pools of water, snow, sand, and debris details. Shape layers allow you to redefine your terrain with precision, using 2D images through 2D stamps, roads, rivers, free sculpting, craters, and much more. Shape layers can be stacked, adjusted, scaled, rotated, and masked. These layers can redefine your entire terrain, or add and blend in unique ways. Let's add a quick black and white logo texture, and blend it into our terrain for a custom mountain range. Increasing the level step will allow us to retain more detail throughout the terrain levels. You can freeform apply the shape layers however you like, and always snap back to the full terrain with the Fit to Terrain button. Once we get the shape to a suitable spot, we can re-enable the filters and see everything come together. Once the geometry is looking nice, we can go ahead and enable the materials. And since this was a sample scene, there are already several materials applied. In the material design mode, we can see the materials with no environmental influence. And in the cinematic mode, we can see the full terrain with materials and lighting. From here, if we have the DCC bridge installed in our DCC, we can easily port over all the data via the sync button at the top right. You'll see the bar along the bottom generating textures, and once it's finished, you can hop into your DCC. For me, I'm using Cinema 4D in the bridge, and once installed, you'll see it in the extensions menu. The bridge shows us the full path of all the assets exported, along with the import options for the geometry. The subdivision viewport amount is for the viewable subdivision object. The rendered object will be hidden from the viewport, so you have planes for both viewing, in the 3D viewport and for the render view. This happens because Octane allows you to display super high quality displacement at render time, and you only need a lower poly object to visualize in 3D space. When ready, we can select Octane and click Synchronize. Now we'll see the terrain group with all of our objects inside. I'll separate the planes from the subdivision objects and organize. The planes themselves are fairly low poly, and using the displacement in the materials, it can only be seen at render time. And we can note the displacement height in the material should align 1-to-1 with the displacement on the viewport object. The viewport objects themselves are displacers for the height that are inside the subdivision surface generators. This allows for the detail on the viewport as needed. You can customize this as you need. They also don't need the Octane materials since they're hidden from render, but we can leave them. It won't cause any issues. If you're ready to render, simply disable the viewport objects from rendering and make sure the planes are set to render only, and you can fire up Octane. If we render the viewport objects along with the displacement, we get some pretty awful results. So it's meant to assist you in 3D for object placement, scatters, and it's just a nice visual reference. Note that these are tile grids from the World Creator export, and each grid is a separate material. Within each, you'll see a composite material isolating all of the areas independently. So at any given time, you can override the texture with different colors and values for each part. Now let's jump back to the World Creator and look at exporting each texture independently. First, if we select the export layer, we'll have only a few options. Use a custom sync folder or a custom export folder. I'll define a custom export folder and hit the plus icon to establish an export preset. Next, you'll see a new export preset, and you can't export just yet. This is the export container that we now need to add different export items before we can export. If we click the plus again, we'll see all of the export items. This is where we can build our own export stack that's useful for whichever workflow and whichever DCC we use. We can also save this as a preset for later exports. You'll even see a mesh option and an Octane package option for an Orbix export. The Orbix export would be a self-contained package with geometry and materials, and it's great for those who work in standalone especially, but we're not going to use that for now, so I'll delete it. There are tons of export items, and the more you use World Creator, the more useful they may become. Each item has its own included settings, and where you see split value, this would split the map into tiles at the desired resolution. The resolution itself is again defined by the terrain resolution setting. We saw those earlier in the terrain settings. And on each map export, you can see the export size listed at the bottom. When everything looks good, you can click the export button in the export presets layer. Once our files are exported, we can jump directly into Cinema or a preferred DCC, and we can start building out our terrain. Similar to the bridge method, we can use two planes, one for viewport visualization and one for render. We can set this up the same, with one plane set to render and one plane set to visibility in the viewport. For the viewport object, we'll plug it into a subdivision surface generator with a displacer. For the displacer, we'll load in a height map from the World Creator export folder. For the height value, back in the World Creator settings, we'll see the Y scale value that we can plug directly into the displacement. Note that our values for X and Y also have to match the 1024 terrain. For a 500 centimeter plane, we'll have to scale the relative value of the 1024 to achieve the 1-to-1 results. The next issue is a sliver of edge information that isn't clamped properly, so a quick fix is to adjust the mapping ever so slightly to something like 100.008 for X and Y, and a slight negative offset to balance it out. Next, we can jump into Octane and apply all of our textures. With a similar texture adjustment, we can simply scale the textures ever so slightly up to a small value of 0.002. From here is plug and play. We have our textures that we can use to plug in the correct channels. With the splat map, we can use the channel picker and pull out individual splat areas from the World Creator and isolate them for more control. I like using composite texture nodes because I can stack layers similar to Photoshop with opacity and blend control, and then they all tie back to the same core textures. From here you can explore the additional procedural texturing directly inside Octane, and add your own additional layers for different looks. World Creator is a fantastic terrain builder, and it can fit perfectly inside your 3D workflows. Download World Creator today and start creating.